All right, perfect. Well, hello everyone. Happy Thursday, and welcome to our live stream doing business in the Arab Gulf. Today we have two experts, Adrian Viller as well as Zach Selch, and they're going to be discussing market opportunities, go-to access points, and growth strategies by leveraging different business development tools, as well as just some strategies for the peninsula in the Arab Gulf. Um, Very much looking forward to this. Just a little bit of background about both experts. Zach has been selling internationally for over 30 years and has gotten purchase orders in more than 130 countries. He's lived several years as an expat in the Middle East, has been doing business in Dubai since the tallest building in town was 12 stories high. He helps global sales leaders shine by helping them choose the right markets, onboard the right distributors, and manage their global teams with intent. Adrian has over 12 years of experience in direct international business development, exporting tech service and solutions to the Middle East, as well as other markets such as Latin America, Europe, and Africa. Uh, Expert in best practices in international and digital growth, as well as things such as of course, business development, website localization, international online marketing, and e-commerce. So I want to thank everyone for being here today. It's going to be a very informative session. I will be moderating the discussion and providing the initial questions, but of course, feel free to submit your own questions at any time. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with the first question. So Adrian and Zach, what are the main characteristics of the Gulf area market that we're going to need to think about to succeed in the Gulf? What are some of the major economies and their commonalities with the two?
Great. Do you want to
Off to
kick
both of you.
off, Adrian, or should I?
Zach, please, over to you.
Oh, okay. So first, let's break that down a little bit. What are some of the things that are really you have to keep in mind about doing business in the Middle East and in the Gulf? First of all, there's a huge difference in business culture between Americans and people in the Gulf. And I'm assuming that most of our viewers today are Americans. When you take a look at Saudi business culture, okay, and you take a look at American business culture, there are some really, really big differences. Whoops. Whoops, I'm sorry about that. And what you're going to see, for instance, is the power distance for in the United States is really small, whereas in the Gulf, it's really big, right? And that's a huge difference. It's almost from a anthropological perspective, it's almost twice as big, right? Likewise, conformity. Likewise, the way people look at uncertainty. Now, what do those things mean? As an American, we're very much used to being a little bit more independent, a little bit more individualistic, that kind of thing. What we're going to be faced with is a situation where people are going to be looking for consensus. If you're going out and selling, you're going to be dealing with a group of people that need to reach consensus, very much like we very often think about Japan. Now, on the flip side of that, also, there's going to be a solid hierarchy. We're not terribly used to that, okay? So we're going to be facing that. And from a perspective of how we present data and how people reach decisions, they're typically going to be looking for hard data that's backed up very often is on paper, right? So when you come and you say, well, such and such an authority, we got this from a professor, we got this from a university, those type of statements will be very helpful. Whereas Americans are a lot more informal about those type of things, right? We establish trust in a very informal way, whereas in the Gulf, these things are done very differently. That's one thing. Another thing we have to keep in mind in terms of the markets is these are all, none of these countries are democracies. There's typically an authority with the government, and we have to keep in mind how that's going to impact business. In a lot of cases, there's a lot of government money around. So, for instance, a lot of things, even like when you sell healthcare in the Gulf, it will very often, most of it will be tied up to government budgets and government spending, right? Things that you might not be thinking about in the United States or in Europe are very commonly tied to government spending and government decision making. And very often, on the one hand, there's going to be a need for consensus. On the other hand, there's going to be a hierarchy with somebody sort of driving that. These are all very young countries in terms of the population. Okay, they're much younger than the United States. They're significantly younger than Europe, which means if your product is sold to people who are in late adolescence or beginning childbearing years, right, then this is a really good market because the percentage of the population in these countries that's under 25 is almost twice as high as it is in Europe, significantly higher than Japan, significantly higher than the United States. And I don't want to dig too much into this more, but a couple of other small things. You have to keep in mind how important religion is to the culture here and how this might impact things. So, for instance, an understanding of Islamic finance is helpful. Another thing is there is huge unemployment among locals. So young Saudi people, young Emiratis, young Kuwaitis, young Qataris are experiencing a lot of unemployment. And what that means is if you offer products and solutions that could help set up jobs, this is something that will be attractive. On the flip side of that, there's a shortage of unskilled labor. So products and solutions that save labor for unskilled labor are also something that's very, very attractive. So these are just a couple of the things I would say that you're going to find across the board in the Arab countries and the Gulf states. Adrian, do you want to add anything to that?
Absolutely. And I think, Zach, that you touched upon, I want to pick up on something particular that you said is just the young population in the Gulf Arab world, but also just generally in the Middle East. And that really should inform a lot of market entry strategies for any company that's looking to do business there. If you think about, and I'll get to some of the similarities that we have with the United States or Europe or some of those other markets that are perhaps more common for exporters. But when you think about, marketing to younger populations, essentially, digital absolutely has to be part of that strategy. Just to give you some sort of key numbers here, the United Arab Emirates in particular has the world's highest social media penetration rate, and the region as a whole has the highest growth in adoption rate for social media. E-commerce is growing at a rate of 25 to 30% per annum pre-pandemic. The pandemic only accelerated that and went hyperbolic in terms of adoption, not just in the Arab Emirates, but in other markets, but particularly there. And importantly, mobile penetration as well. You got in countries like the UAE, it's over 100%. That means that there are several people out there, there's hundreds of thousands of people out there, they have more than one mobile device. With Saudi being very close at 94% for mobile adoption. So most people are on their mobile device. So that has to inform not just how you can market to people who live in Saudi and to Emiratis, but also it should inform what sort of products and services they're interested in consuming. Zach touched upon automation 4.0, industry 4.0. Those are some of the major drivers of growth in the Middle East. And we'll talk about that probably later, but that's one of those key areas where the governments are investing heavily into over the next couple of decades as they diversify their economies. But a couple of just key bits of information on where the market similarities are, and this might bust a few stereotypes out there about doing business in the Middle East and doing in the Gulf. So there are differences, of course. There are cultural differences, and there are religious differences, and there are linguistic differences. Arabic and English, just to give you an idea, are as disparate in terms of languages as you can get. There is a scale that goes from 0 to 1. It's called a linguistic difference scale, with 1 being completely different and 0 being obviously the most similar to your native language. Arabic falls just about 2/3 of the way at 0.67. So it means that there is a significant difference between English and Arabic. And within Arabic, Arabic is not universal. And we might think about that as being universal, but Arabic is not exactly the same country to country. There is something called Modern Standard Arabic, and it is sort of the version of Arabic that's used on TV and media and in print and in business. But when you go, especially if you're marketing to consumers, you want to be cognizant of a difference, especially in Egypt, as Egyptian Arabic is very different from Gulf Arabic. It's very different from the Arabic that's spoken in the Maghreb region in Northern Africa. So you want to be hypersensitive to those differences and make sure if you're marketing in Arabic that you're picking the right one. Since we're on the subject of language, I would say that in the Middle East and particularly in the Gulf states, English is the business language. So you're on good grounding in communicating in English. So that's just something to keep in mind there. And just to say, in terms of
One thing I'll
GDP and the
say with
economic,
that, oh,
go for it, Zach.
sorry, I just wanted to say we're going to look at this from a slightly different perspective. From a sales perspective, I know I talk to a lot of localization people, a lot of interpretation, translation, and they're like, you should use the right Arabic in every spot. And I always say, if you're going to choose one Arabic because you have a limited budget, go for each Egyptian. Because, like you said, with modern Arabic, the Egyptian Arabic has sort of pushed the television and the movie industry. So everybody will feel comfortable with Egyptian. Whereas if
Hmm.
you're dealing with, say, Maghreb or Yemenite or Syrian, people will say, oh, that guy's from Syria. Whereas somebody who's speaking Egyptian, it's sort of like your mid-Atlantic. Just wanted to throw that out there because some people are working off of budgets and they can't use 12 different dialects, right?
100%. And in fact, most website, most media, most social media platforms use MSA, which is Egyptian Arabic, as sort of the standard. And it is, in fact, when we do projects for our clients, is the recommendation to go with modern standard Arabic, unless they have a very specific regional or country market that they're trying to penetrate. So it is a decision to be made,
Right.
whether you're taking a regional approach to the market or you're doing a very sort of country specific approach. But that's just one of the considerations.
Great.
All right,
Great.
perfect.
Now,
Well,
you
that was
also
a
you asked
go
a
ahead, Zach.
bunch of questions tied together, Christopher, and we sort of answered the first half of it. So, do you want to go back to your the second half of your original question?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the second question that I wanted to go ahead and touch upon, based off that, is, what are some of those major players? What are some of those major economies in the Gulf? And what are some things that exporters should keep in mind when
Mhm.
looking at those? What are some of the commonalities? And of course, what's the best way to get their product in?
So I'm going to say we take a look at this and we're very often thinking about the rich Gulf states, Saudi, Qatar, the Emirates, and those are the big players. Now they're typically, so one thing I'll say is they are typically what I would call a high-end, prosperous type market, high per capita GDP market. Now, we also have to keep in mind that if you are selling something that is less expensive, aimed for a cheaper market, those places, they all have large populations of workers. They all have a secondary market, which is, say, lower end. So they are viable markets for a lot of things because if you have, several million, maybe 5 or 7 million foreign workers in a country like Saudi Arabia, then you can be selling something that isn't necessarily high end. But these are great markets for expensive products. They really are looking for the best stuff, right? The things that you're going to sell in the United States now, both in terms of luxury goods, but also in terms of robust capital equipment. So you have the Saudi, you have the Emirates, you have Qatar, you have Kuwait. Those are typically the more valuable, the higher per capita GDP countries. What I find is, usually you're looking at putting somebody, if you want to have, like I say, a regional manager, Dubai is a very good place. The airports are good, the legal system is good, etc. It's a little bit less comfortable to put somebody in Saudi Arabia. People are usually less excited about living in Saudi Arabia. Qatar is also a good place, but you have to keep in mind that in the past 5 years, there have been political stresses between Qatar and other countries, which meant it was more difficult to get in and out. So really, Dubai and the Emirates have all the advantages in terms of that. Now, when you take a look at the region, the Gulf, you have Iran, right? And Iran is not a bad market depending on what you can sell. Now, I'm going to tell you this as a blanket statement. If you're an American company, don't try to sell anything in Iran without talking to the State Department, right? Because I'm not a lawyer and
Good
I
way to
don't
get
play one
yourself
on
in trouble.
TV. Right. It's a good way to get yourself in serious trouble. But depending on what you sell, if you can get the paperwork to sell into Iran, they are a very, very good market. I've sold millions of dollars to Iran over the years of medical equipment with all the paperwork. The paperwork is a little bit difficult to get, but it's a very, very attractive market. And then in that region, you also have Pakistan, which you could consider a Gulf state, or you might not. But Pakistan is a large market for American products. Now, all of these countries import a lot of capital stuff, a lot of consumer stuff. They love American products. They all have, aside from Iran, they all have good relationships with the United States. They will accept American products with minimum paperwork, with minimum registration, all those type of things. So these are really good markets for your products in these areas. Do you want to add to that, Adrian?
Yeah, there is a market preference for US made products in the region. And in fact, when you look at, and I kind of hinted at this earlier, some of the economic diversification plans that the leading countries in the Gulf have, you look at Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030 plan, Qatar's Vision 2030 plan, Bahrain's Vision 2030 plan, which, by the way, these are things that anybody can type into Google and you'll get a website or a PDF document outlining exactly where these countries are investing their sovereign funds. Just for context, there's an assumed reality within the Gulf states that their main source of income, which has been oil extraction, is nearing its end. In terms of an era, it's nearing its end, and they have a need to diversify. They have a need to invest in infrastructure. They have a need to invest in different industries. And most of these plans, when you look at what they're laying out, they're very competitive with each other. So, especially Zach touched upon it, Qatar and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, but also Jordan and Kuwait and also Bahrain, they're very competitive with each other. But they also have embraced, digital enablement and technology as one of the main avenues for growth in the future, and that means a lot of capital investment. So if you have a product that aligns with any of those objectives that those markets have set for themselves in the next 10, 20, 30 years, you can pretty much find companies that are going to be willing to invest in those technologies and going to be willing to buy those technologies and even build those technologies in market, enabling them to grow into the future. So that would be, one of my recommendations is look at those plans and look at where they are going strategically over the next 20, 30 years. And do keep in mind the competitiveness of the region and parlay that into your business development strategy.
No, that's a great idea. And you see this, they're looking to bring in manufacturing jobs. They're looking to
Mm-hmm.
bring in finance jobs, local headquarter jobs. You see a lot, what people will tell you is if you're based in Dubai, you have access to a bigger piece of the world population in a single leg of a flight than any other city in the world. So to base a sales manager there makes sense. And a lot of times they're pushing to put headquarters there. They're pushing to get manufacturing based there. They're working on financial jobs and financial software and that kind of thing. So yeah, there's a lot can be sold there that is tied up with creating jobs for locals.
Yeah. And Zach, perhaps you'll agree with us, but I think the UAE and particularly Dubai, but also Abu Dhabi, perhaps in the finance industry more than in other industries, but it's seen as a springboard for the region. Essentially, like you
Right.
said, putting your local headquarters, putting your regional sales manager there, and because it's so well connected to the rest of the region, and because so much of it acts as a trading port for the rest of the region, that it's logistically easy. It's there's an environment, a legal environment that is embracive of Western culture, and while still maintaining its own identity, and while still being a welcoming place for foreigners.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's comfortable. There's reasonably good legal protection in Dubai. The airport's great. It's really easy to get around. You can get around without speaking a word of Arabic for your whole life if you want. It's just a very, very comfortable place to do business. And if you're a regional sales manager, even, when I started work, everybody wanted to put their European regional sales managers in London or Paris, right? Today, I think Dubai is a very good choice for a Europe, Middle East, and Africa sales position, right? And you can actually get to a lot of Asia from Dubai pretty easily, right? So it's something really to think about.
And to
Perfect.
that point,
All right.
Zach, go ahead, Chris.
Oh,
Oh, sorry, I wasn't trying to stop that conversation, but I guess sort of to highlight a little bit more. I know that we have spoken a lot about those similarities as well as some of the certain aspects of the markets. I guess one question that's kind of coming off of this is, especially for exporters that are here, really looking to enter. What are some of those resources? What are some of those maybe tools that they're able to use in entering these markets? Zach, of course, what are some of those state resources? Adrian, if you could touch upon some of those tools that may be a best practice in that region.
Hmm. I think I
so
can speak
obviously,
to
oh, sorry.
you. Go ahead, Zach, please.
No, no. Well, so I was going to say they're obviously very good. I mean, the U.S. Commerce Department has people in Dubai, in the Emirates, in Saudi, actually pretty much in every state in the Gulf. The
Hmm.
British have people in the Gulf. So depending on where you're from, there are different export institutes that are represented in the Gulf. Many U.S. states have representatives. So well, you can work from on the federal level or on the state level. Um, to be very frank, I'll give a little pitch. This is what I do: is I help companies expand their global sales organizations. So I'm a resource. If you reach out to me, I can help you set up a sales organization or manage a sales organization in the Gulf pretty quickly. So those are some of the various things that you can do. I would also say that if you are thinking about something that could create local jobs, I would be talking to the sovereign funds. As Adrian said, those sovereign funds are looking to help people set up operations in the Middle East that will create jobs for locals. Adrian?
Hmm. I would 100% agree with you, Zach. And there are local resources. Zach was mentioning they're available. Most certainly, the U.S. Commercial Service has local offices in every state. Sometimes several in a state. At least here in Florida, where I am, there are offices in Fort Lauderdale, in Miami, to help Florida exporters find those connections and find those relationships in their target market, and also to give some general export guidance. A second layer of that is at a state level, where Zach is in Illinois. There is the OTI, the Office of Trade and Investment, the
Right.
Illinois Office of Trade and Investment. Where I am in Florida, there's Enterprise Florida, and these organizations are here to help support exporters and grow Florida, Illinois companies' exports. Or similar organizations in states like North Carolina and Virginia and Alabama and Montana. And if anybody has questions on how to get in contact with those organizations, they can reach out to us, and we're happy to provide those contacts and those linkages. But just to say, these organizations also offer export marketing plans. So if you are really not sure and you're not ready to make a decision on which market to go to, or you're not ready, or you're not entirely sure if your product is a good fit for that region, they can help with research and help you make data-driven decisions. Now, for sort of practical aspects of on the ground, Zach, a question that I had for from a friend of mine who actually private messaged me while we were on this chat is, what are some of the, I guess, frequent mistakes that people made when trying to grow their business in the Arab Gulf region, and what is sort of the prescribed suggestion from you?
So we were talking about this joking yesterday, and I say people have this feeling that, they hear that the Middle East is very exotic and things are done differently and so on. And everybody gets this feeling. I like to call it, it's like they imagine there's this genie and they say, oh, I'm going to meet this guy and this guy is going to, he's going to connect me to the royal family and then I'm going to get all this business. And the bottom line is, in the Gulf, they are making rational business decisions in the same way they're doing it in other places. They might be doing it slightly different from the way you're used to, but there really is, I can't tell you how many times I've heard this, where somebody says, I met this guy on the plane and his cousin is a prince. And he said that if I give him, 7 points off of everything I ever sell, he'll get me all this business, right? And I hear this all the time. And I know people who have signed away 20 or 30 points on everything that they're going to sell in the future because they keep meeting people who promise them these things. Here's the thing. There are 2,000 members of the Saudi royal family. There are about 2,000 princes across the Gulf from the other countries. That doesn't mean they can help you do any business, right? So you might, there isn't, I've worked with people, I've had partners who were members of different royal families, but that isn't all they had. They had a business and all of this. So the fact that somebody tells you that he knows a bunch of royal family members or that kind of thing, I would run the other way, essentially, right? Because unless you're getting that introduction possibly from the American Commerce Department or something, I just wouldn't trust that. I hear it all the time. So that's one thing. You are going to have to do business in a rational way, in the same way you would do it in Germany or the United States. There'll be slight differences, but you have to present a business case. You have to show why this is valuable, etc. There are no magic carpets helping out with this, and that's a big thing. Now, the other part of that is sort of, there are no shortcuts. And then the flip side of that might be, people will say, oh, I have this friend and he's been living in Dubai for a few years and I'm going to make him my sales manager. Well, he's British. He doesn't speak any English. He doesn't speak any Arabic, but he's a really good guy. So I'm sure he can do business with me. Well, that also doesn't work, right? Most probably the regional sales managers you hire to sell in the Middle East aren't going to be the type of people who fit into your company picnic, right? They're not going to be, some good old boy who went to University of Georgia or something like that. They're going to be a local, probably an Egyptian or a Palestinian or a Lebanese person who's been selling in the Gulf, whose native language is Arabic, and who's probably been there for years. Those are the type of people you want to find. And so that's sort of the flip side of that. And you really do have to learn. I know a lot about Islam, right? I've read dozens of books about it. I know a lot about, you want to embrace the culture because the people over there are just as proud of their culture as Americans are of their culture, right? And if you go in and you don't know anything and you insult their culture and you do something wrong and you don't want to eat their food and all of that, again, you're not going to do good business. You're not going to build good relationships. Every place you're doing business here has a very, very strong relationship-driven business practice, and the relationships are difficult to build, not like in the United States. In the United States, we very often go in, if you go into Best Buy and somebody approaches you in a blue shirt, you hand them your credit card, right? You don't need to build trust in the United States. We have this feeling, you come in and you say, well, I'm the vice president of sales, trust me. It doesn't work that way, right? It can take years to build up trust. So you have to work at gaining people's trust through showing them that you're committed to the market, you respect their culture, you respect who they are, and then you can do business. It takes some time.
And for the same the same notion, breaking that trust and breaking with those cultural norms and those traditions that are observed can be very costly.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, perfect. Thank you both for that great, very extensive answer. I guess as we see sort of the time on the live stream going, I guess one last takeaway that I'd love if you guys could both provide is, what are three takeaways, real brief takeaways that you would provide to an exporter that was maybe a little bit indecisive of doing business there, or is really trying to enter the market. What are three quick takeaways that you would provide them?
There's a lot of money there, right? I've been doing business there for a very, very long time. I've sold a lot. Um, the the customers are good. If you work with somebody and they're a reasonably good person and you develop a good relationship, you might see revenue from them for decades, right? So it is worthwhile doing business in the Gulf. It's not easy, and you have to keep that in mind. And I'll tell you, for instance, I used to joke, you go to the Ministry of Health in Saudi Arabia, and any given day, a third of the people aren't at their desks, and people move jobs on a regular basis. And very frankly, everybody has long names that include multiple repeated names like Mohammed and Ahmed, right? So you go in and you're keeping notes and you say, well, I met this guy. And then a month later, you go in and it's a different guy at that job, right? And you can't remember the names and you're keeping notes. There are difficulties like that, but you just have to push through. You have to work hard at it, and you do get really good results. And, have a cultural appreciation, understand the culture. Those things will get you solid revenue out of the Gulf.
And just to agree and add to that, the market opportunity is there, but my recommendation is the same. Do your homework first. Understand who you're going to market to, identify who your buyer persona is, and then partner with the right people to make it a successful strategy. It is a profitable opportunity in that market, but you got to have the right guidance. You got to have the right people. You have to have the right coaching. And just in terms of the digital aspect and the digital strategy that you need for access to support your business development goals in that region, be mindful of the language. We talked about it. Have a web presence in English and modern standard Arabic that allows you to be understood by both business and consumers in that market. Be mindful of the cultural elements. There are certain colors, there's certain imagery, there's certain design elements, reading right to left instead of left to right in Arabic, that you have to be mindful for when you create a digital product for the Middle East. Be mobile first. These are markets that have embraced technology far above and beyond where us in the United States and in similar markets like Europe, how they have embraced technology. Have a social media strategy and do not discount e-commerce opportunities that are available in that market. And just to reiterate the last one, again, do your homework and find the right partners. Those are the two combinations of factors that, in my view, will make you successful in this very lucrative market.
All right, perfect. Well,
All good points.
it seems that our time, yeah, no, absolutely. And it seems like our time is kind of wrapping up here. So what I'll go ahead and do, if you'd like to go ahead and reach out to Zach, you can find him online at www.globalsalesmentor.com or here on LinkedIn at Zach Selch. And we'll go ahead and put some of those links in the comments below. As always, you can reach out to him, as well as Adrian at www.ibt.onl or here on LinkedIn as well at Adrian Viller. Gentlemen, it was great having you both here today. I think there was a lot of great information
Thank you
that
very
we
much
got.
for
And
arranging this.
absolutely. And
Zach,
looking
great
forward
speaking with
to,
you and looking forward to the next one.
Yeah,
absolutely.
so
All
am
right.
I. Thanks a lot for setting this up. This was a lot of fun. Take care.
Take
Perfect.
care and bye bye,
Thank you both.
everybody.
Have a good one.